This week, we begin a series of stories where we'll explore how a budget veto, a cut, could impact you. We begin tonight with Alaska Public Media and the idea that public safety could be impacted by cuts.
We expected it to happen.
The shows on at Alaska Public Media during the day are for the kids. Colorful stories meant to entertain and educate. The halls are empty. Reporters are out gathering the day's news. And what the general manager wants you to know is that if the state money that pays for some of this goes away, you'd lose a lot.
What you're really paying for when you provide grants to local stations is potentially life-saving information that you're providing. And so that's going to be compromised, even though the governor believes that he's actually still funding the ARC system. We're going to have to go to our donors, our listeners, our viewers, and make up that basically $400,000 gap. And that's just here in Anchorage. Stations all across the state, especially radio stations, are going to lose about $74,000. That's going to be a real struggle for them.
Public media stations operating across the state provide news and entertainment. But more importantly, it's the public safety alerts provided that have the biggest impacts.
What it really means is that we're going to have to pay for all the public safety infrastructure.
The governor has long said cuts need to be made to balance the budget and provide a full PFD. The cuts to public broadcasting were expected.
Every decision that's made right now is going to be difficult. I don't care if it's public media, I don't care if it's healthcare related, but right now we've got to get back to getting things under control. The government has to live within its means.
And that means, Ed Ullman says, asking for more donations if the cuts aren't vetoed by lawmakers.
This is all part of the difficult process of realigning state government and services.
Services like public media, which will keep airing, but maybe with a different way to pay for it.
Tonight, we're looking at what could be the future of the state. The budget's being slashed. There are intense debates over the amount of the PFD, and oil revenue to the state has declined.
Now, that decline has led to some of the concerns over the budget. Tonight, we ask, what, if anything, could create more income for the state?
On a beautiful Alaskan day, a chance to make a new friend.
Where are you from?
I'm from China.
China, welcome to Alaska.
Is best done over a good meal with a hot dog. Creating a new relationship and a financial transaction with a trickle-down effect.
Here you go, my friend. It's gonna be $6.
From a hot dog stand, we go down the road and meet a woman from Chicago.
This is my 50th state, and my goal was to do 50 within my 50 years. So Alaska was my last. I saved the best for last.
What everyone has in common is that they will spend thousands of dollars here while on vacation. More than $1.4 billion in payroll was created by tourism employment for an economic impact of $4.5 billion, according to the Resource Development Council.
Tourism has been showing an amazing run of success over the last several years, with a big surge in the population numbers coming up from the lower 48.
But even with that success, it doesn't come close to replicating the financial impacts of the oil and gas industry. According to RDC, 1/3 of all jobs in the state are from oil and gas. But it's an industry that's been in decline, which financially impacts the state.
While we still have a vast amount of resource left on the North Slope, we have seen a slight dip in production.
Can anything produce as much money either from a good-paying job or taxes?
That we haven't talked about is mining, and mining is has a significant upside potential in our state.
The average mining industry job is over $110,000 a year, so this is a real family wage job, something that provides for a healthy lifestyle.
RDC says mining added $34 million to the economy, another $149 million to state government, and $300 million to Alaska Native corporations.
I don't know that it could ever provide as much as the oil industry. There's 40 to 50 billion barrels left.
So while it's been down slightly, oil and gas are still the state's best financial friends.
Man, so far so good with the sunshine out. It's been great.
And federal government spending for the military is also a big contributor, as well as transportation and health care.
Still, we are looking into the potential effects of those vetoes, and having the right to an attorney is a guarantee in all criminal cases in the United States, but not civil cases. Channel 2's Taylor Perez explores how the vetoes could impact Alaskans' access to free civil legal representation.
Imagine stepping in front of a judge and presenting yourself and going up against a trained attorney as the case prosecutor, all because you can't afford legal representation. It's a courtroom scenario that Alaska Legal Services Corporation hopes will never happen.
People who have critical civil legal needs, like victims of domestic violence or elder abuse, or people who are being illegally evicted or wrongfully foreclosed in their homes, have the legal representation that they need.
This legal group has served 8,000 Alaskans in 197 communities over the last year, including Jose Perez, a full-time caregiver to his daughter with multiple sclerosis. Jose needed help getting his condo association to put in a handicapped parking spot for his daughter.
American Disabilities Act doesn't cover that, but the Fair Housing Act does. And so he helped me by drawing up the legal forms to present to the Condo Association, and then he was there through the whole process.
But this kind of legal help may now be more limited for Alaskans after the governor's recent budget veto cut $759,000 in state funding for Alaska Legal Services.
The issue is, and we all know this, we can't kick the can down the road because we're running out of road.
When announcing the budget vetoes, Governor Dunleavy acknowledged tough choices must be made to guarantee Alaska's expenses match state revenue. But those choices are tough to accept for many who currently offer free help to Alaskans in need.
We are going to be forced to turn away nearly half of the victims of domestic violence we represent in a given year.
Executive Director Nicole Nelson worries these financial decisions at a state level could equate to life or death decisions, especially for the state's most desperate victims.
2 or 3 times a year, there's a domestic violence murder that makes the front page of the news. And every single time I think about that, I really hope that it wasn't somebody that we had to turn away. Clearly, we can do better than that.
KTUU reached out to Governor Dunleavy's office on Tuesday for comment on this story, but we have not heard back. Reporting in Anchorage, I'm Taylor Perez, Channel 2 News.
Closing a campus, thousands of jobs lost, and increased tuition.
The University of Alaska faces all of that as it stands to lose more than $130 million from the governor's budget. It is the same university system that gave the governor his master's degree.
Full PFD now!
We heard the message.
Save our state! Save our state!
From the Mat-Su to Anchorage,
we support the governor, we support the full dividend.
People are upset.
I think he's out to ruin the state.
Wednesday afternoon, Alaska lawmakers failed to override the governor's veto of $444 million from the state operating budget. For the University of Alaska, it erased $130 million on top of a $5 million cut approved by the legislature. That's a 41% cut in state funding from last year and a 17% cut to UA's overall budget.
There are going to be ripple tidal wave, if you will, effects of that cut on enrollment and the tuition that comes from enrollment, and also on research grants and contracts, because there'll be fewer faculty out there competing for those grants and contracts. So really, the $135 million, I think, is a conservative estimate for the budget impact in the current fiscal year.
Here's what could happen now. About 2,500 University of Alaska staff could take 10 days of unpaid leave. There has been talk of closing a campus. University of Alaska Anchorage could have 700 layoffs and the elimination of about 40 of its 105 degree programs. That's a loss of at least 3,000 students. For now, Johnson says he is cautiously optimistic the veto overrides may still happen by Saturday.
The university will proceed to plan as if this override was unsuccessful. We have programs to plan for, students to plan for, so we'll be moving forward. Monday, July 15th, the Board of Regents will be meeting to consider a possible declaration of financial exigency, and then also to discuss what strategic options might be available for pretty dramatic and rapid cost reduction.
The cuts, education advocates say, are larger than any other university has faced.
There is the looming danger of loss of accreditation. The Northwest Commission for Colleges and Universities has already signaled that cuts of this magnitude, so suddenly inflicted, would leave the institutions, or are likely to leave the institutions, in a position in which they cannot be institutions of educational quality.
Conservative groups, which agree with the governor, say strong leadership will move the university forward.
I think it's important that we have a budget built upon our expenditures that actually match the actual revenue that we have coming in. And so it's important to deal with fiscal reality.
A reality that will mean a smaller university and possibly a full PFD.
I believe they have many smart employees there and strong leaders. And so I'm confident they can find a way to restructure to accommodate the changes that are coming.
And changes are coming.
Over the past couple of weeks, we've been diving into how the governor's recent actions could affect you, including students across the state. Here in Anchorage, reporter Matt Leisman set out to learn more about what the vetoes will mean for the Anchorage School District.
Beth, the Anchorage School District announced today that they firmly oppose the governor's budget vetoes, not just on education funding, but on many other programs they say will impact ASD families.
I've had 4 biological children who've graduated from Anchorage schools who have attended college debt-free, and then I have these 3.
Adrienne Reed, an Anchorage School District parent, is also the founder of the Faithful Few, which helps students take advantage of the resources around them to get an edge towards earning college scholarships. More than 100 students have gone through the program so far, but now their resources are in danger.
The resources that marginalized and diverse students need tremendously to have the same playing field that the students in the lower 48 have, those vetoes are going to cut.
ASD itself was relatively unharmed by the budget vetoes when compared to the University of Alaska system. But School Board President Star Marset says many of the other programs being cut will hurt students' families.
The reductions in homeless assistance, Medicaid, early childhood, and other support services will add stress to our most at-risk students, which will negatively impact their education.
She, Reed, and school board member Dina Mitchell are worried that cuts like these will drive families and graduating students out of Alaska.
There's so many people who absolutely love this state and are so invested in it, and they have really hard decisions to make because they have to think about their families and their futures and make decisions that sometimes they absolutely don't want to do.
With the vote to overturn the budget vetoes failed, the future of the ASD and of Reed's children remain uncertain.
We also wanted to know how the vetoes might hit some of our state's most vulnerable, the homeless. Today, we talked to some of those most familiar with this at-risk population and even a few people experiencing homelessness themselves.
Just because we're homeless, we're not bad.
In most Anchorage neighborhoods is an at-risk resident, some more visible than others, though they may not feel that way.
Like they don't care about us.
Many of those wandering the streets are without a home of their own.
I'm just nervous and scared where people gonna sleep and someone get killed on the streets.
At the same time, providers say added cuts outlined in Governor Mike Dunleavy's budget vetoes will only exacerbate the squeeze felt by those looking to help Alaska's homeless.
We understand that times are tough and changes need to be made, but we can't do it on the backs of the most vulnerable people.
For Beans Cafe, for example, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars it has already cut from its services. Plus the recent slashing of certain longer-term programs that help clients get back on their feet. Brother Francis Shelter, already down 150 beds, is now closed for use during the day. And the Rural Alaska Community Action Program is considering soon shuttering 2 of its 5 Anchorage facilities, housing 350 tenants, including 150 children.
The consequences for us are pretty significant. They don't have many other options. We're probably one of the last options in Anchorage for someone who is homeless. And when they come to us, the services that we provide give them an opportunity to try to change the trajectory that they had been on that put them into homelessness.
Well, for 11 years, the Ocean Ranger program monitored the cruise ship industry, keeping an eye out, monitoring their environmental operations and marine discharges.
But it's part of the governor's vetoes. Tonight, Financing Alaska looks at the numbers and asks what the fees from this program will now pay for.
One of the prettiest ways to see Alaska is by water. And for the past 11 years, after a voter-approved ballot initiative, on board a ship was a Coast Guard-trained marine engineer to make sure these waters stay clean and the cruise ships don't pollute.
I think the industry has proven beyond the shadow of a doubt that they can't be trusted to police themselves.
But that program was vetoed by the governor, even though the program is paid for through cruise ship fees. So what happens now to the $4 berth fee paid by cruise ship passengers?
The $4 per berth will still be collected, and we have committed to working with the legislature during the interim to trying to figure a way to more responsibly spend that money, to do better things for the environment, to more effectively monitor the cruise ship industry, much better than the current Ocean Ranger program has been.
The commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation says the fees raise about $4 million a year. And he says the Ocean Rangers for the past 11 years have only found 6 observations that have led to notices of violations. But Ocean Ranger advocates say the impact is actually much higher.
It's not something costing the state money. And when you look at all of the impacts to Alaska's waters and fisheries right now with the temperatures of the ocean rising and everything else, the idea that we wouldn't want to have someone there who works for us to watch what's going on and make sure that our waters are being protected is ludicrous.
Commissioner Jason Bruni says just because the Rangers go away doesn't mean oversight will also.
I see early season inspections. I see using technology to show when valves are open or closed. I also see a way to improve the environment by using some of that money to help onshore wastewater treatment facilities.
So while the ship seems to have sailed on the Ocean Rangers, protecting the environment is what everyone hopes will continue.